Hello guys. I just got done watching Richard Spencer's live stream at Auburn University, and I want to talk about it a little bit. On the things I agree with him and the things that I don't. And also on the fact that of what a touchy, controversial, uncomfortable topic this can be. I only caught the last 10 minutes or so of his live stream, and then I listened to the question and answers. I didn't even finish it because there was a lot of stupid questions, but I wanted to address a few of them. Probably one of my bigger disagreements with the alt-right is their approach to their ideas. You know, I might agree with them that there is a danger or there's a concern that Western European countries are not having enough children to maintain their population. They're only about 10% of the population or something like that. And so there's a possibility that they could become extinct. And I would hate to see that. I would also hate to see an animal become extinct. Or let's, for example, an American Indian tribe. Native Americans, the Sioux or the Navajo. I know that many of them are very small, losing their languages. It's a shame. That is their culture, their heritage, their background. They have the full right and the responsibility to keep that. I believe that every nationality, regional or racial, has the responsibility to maintain their own heritage and culture. And I wish that the alt-right would focus on that instead of just focusing on their own heritage, the white. And they do that because they feel that white people are attacked, that it's a taboo subject. And it is somewhat. It is somewhat a taboo subject to talk about the possibility of the declining numbers of the Western Europeans. That is, and I think that would be a shame to lose them. I mean, they've been some of the most inventive people in history. Democracy, freedom, prohibition of slavery. A lot of these good things have come from Western European culture. And where would it go if they became extinct? I don't know. I know that there's Asian countries who are doing well with this, but I just think that every race has the full 100% responsibility to keep their culture, their identity. Identity is so important. Without our identity, and let's put all that aside, all race, all nationality and all that, and just your own identity. I think that ties in, but if you don't know who you are, if your identity isn't strong, you are a weak person. You can be two things. You can be a passive, weak person where people take advantage of you, or you can become arrogant, harsh, violent to cover up your weakness. But you are weak if you don't know your identity. Identity is so important. And history, we don't know where we're going if we don't know where we came from. We have to put it in context. It is so important that everyone keeps their identity. And I don't think that it should be done at the expense of anyone else. I believe that an ideology of lack is wrong. I believe there's plenty for all of us. The universe has created enough. I believe that God put laws in the universe, and whether you believe that or not, that's fine. But I believe God put laws in the universe, and they function for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist or if you're a Christian or if you're who you are. The laws are true for you, and that is that there's always enough. We attract what we believe in. And so I believe that we should focus on everyone's right for their own national identity, their own racial identity, their own regional identity, and we don't have to take away from anyone else's right. And I believe that we can work together. I believe that we can cross over and work together, be friends and laugh and joke, whatever. I mean, just whatever. It doesn't lessen anyone else's right. And getting off of that, one of the first questions Richard Spencer got asked was a verse in the Bible. saying, "There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor male nor female, for you are all in one in Christ." Some guy brought that verse up as a fact of identity, and I believe that's totally an illegitimate point. I believe that, yes, if you're a Christian, you're all equal. I believe if you're not a Christian, you're all equal. It doesn't matter your value. That's determining your value as a human, as working together. I believe that, of course, that is true. That doesn't mean you don't need your own private identity so that you know who you are. You still need that identity, even though your identity isn't more valued than someone else's identity. They're equal. I believe that this is a topic that needs to be discussed. We can talk about it. We don't have to be hateful. We don't have to, that's the problem with the social justice warriors and the alt-right. When you have people that aren't well read, they're not intellects, they're parrots. They are taught something and they use it for their own benefit, and they leave a path of destruction behind them. They're damaging people. Whether it's the alt-right or the social justice warrior, they're in the same boat. They're the flip of the coin. One's the heads, one's tails. They're using their ideology, their points of view to promote their own benefits instead of looking at it as a way to benefit everyone. That we don't have to, that someone doesn't have to be the loser. I believe that there's never a time when someone has to be the loser. We can all be winners. We can all have that right. I do believe that people are very quick to call the alt-right hateful neo-Nazis. And I prefer not to call them that, even though some of them are. I also want to give them the full right of free speech to speak their views. I just think an ethno-state isn't realistic, especially not in the United States, where we have a history where early in our history we had, Chinese immigrants come. We brought black slaves over here. I believe that gives them some claim to the country. I believe that I'm not sure that I'm for changing demographics. I think that we should go back to the pre-1965 immigration. I believe that immigration should basically stop in the United States for now. I don't think we have the right to be bringing more people with the problems we have, financial, political, and all that. We should almost entirely stop immigration. But if we have immigration, it should be based on the demographics we have today, or we had. I don't think we should change them too much. I think that our country has worked because I believe it has worked because of a sound founding. Even though there was a lot of problems with the founding fathers, a lot of mistakes they made, it's still the best country. There's still I don't know if anyone can say, hey, we're better than the United States. We've created more wealth. We're more free. We're more individual. I don't know if they can do that. So they did something right, and we need to maintain that. And I'm not contributing that to race necessarily. I'm just saying I think we owe it to the founders, to the people, to keep it the way that it was to an extent. So that being said, another thing Richard Spencer brought up was he said, he was asked a question, I didn't quite hear it, but he said, I'm a collectivist. I believe in collectivism. And he didn't go on to explain it. He did talk a little bit that made me think that he said he referred to it as a wolf pack. The wolf makes the wolf pack, but the wolf is nothing without the wolf pack. And I agree to one thing. I think pure capitalism doesn't work. And the reason I know it doesn't work, pure capitalism, is because I watched a documentary, and I don't want to put too much faith in a documentary, but it all makes sense, and it was called The Men Who Built America, and it started out with Vanderbilt, the railroad tycoon. And then it went on how John D. Rockefeller wrested the power from him because he was creating kerosene at the time, which was the oil that everyone used, and he was transporting it on Vanderbilt's railroad, but he got the upper hand over Vanderbilt. And then J.P. Morgan came along with and aligned with Edison or whoever it was on electricity and banking, and they gained the upper hand, and Carnegie on steel. And they literally bought a president. And they literally were ruining anyone who competed with them. That's what happens with pure capitalism. A few people get to the top and they ruin everyone else. So we need a small amount of socialism in there. We need checks and balances. Capitalism is great, but just pure unregulated capitalism will create a huge divide between the rich and the poor. So, I'm not just 100% capitalism. We need a balance. But when you start cracking down too hard and you become too collective, unless you're the Hooterites out in Montana who are religious and are fairly nonviolent and fairly fair, they all work together, and they create their own society, their own money, it usually doesn't work. What happens is people become unmotivated, they quit producing, and then you have lack. That's what happens with collectivism. Everyone starts looking at everyone else to produce because it's not that beneficial to them. That's the dangers. When you are forced to sell gas, I believe Venezuela is an example of this. They had to sell gas dirt cheap. People didn't even collect the money. It wasn't even worth it. You don't want to produce anymore. Why would you produce when you don't get paid? And eventually it becomes, everything's extinct. It's scarce. And that's what's happening. So we need capitalism with a little regulation and socialism. I wouldn't even be against, and a lot of people argue with me, but I wouldn't be against a single-payer health care plan. Health care is one of our biggest problems. I think it's 18% of the GDP. It is so massive. It affects me. It affects a lot of people. We could afford it if we spend our money wisely. The problem is our government is such a whale. And I think that's one thing that Donald Trump never addressed during his campaign. A little bit, but not much. He doesn't realize what a whale our government needs to be downsized, smaller, so we can afford things like health care. I think we could do that. I know there's setbacks, there's drawbacks, there's things to be addressed, but something has to be done. Either single payer, or they have to make it reasonable. I mean, people can't afford $1,300, $1,400. Middle class Americans cannot afford $1,300, $1,400 a month for health care with a $4,000 deductible. It's ridiculous. It's insane. And that's what's happening now. So, I'm open to some collectivism, some socialism, but our economy basically has to be driven by capitalism. That was one thing he talked about. Let me check my notes here. Have patience. I think I mentioned this, but history. Our history is so important. The focus from our schools has gone away. I mean, they're not focusing on the history of where we come and why we are where we are. I think that is so fundamental in what makes America great. I think going back to that. But, I don't want to make this video long. I support Richard Spencer's free speech. Obviously, I understand some of his views, but I don't totally agree with the way that he portrays them. I recognize that the alt-right, there's some people in there that are just like the SJWs, just the flip side of the coin. I believe that ultimately everyone that was born here and has a history here has the right to be here, and we have to find a way to work together. We just can't create a bunch of ethno-states and separate each other from them. We have to find a way to work together. And that's about it for tonight. Thanks, guys. Comment below, subscribe if you like it. Like.